to both. I try to circulate it to both communities. But if you didn't get it and you'd like to see it, you can email me and I'll send you a copy to james.leffert@comcast.net. Okay, now I'd like to just introduce our speakers. We're very fortunate with the speakers that we have here today from Standing Together. We have Sally Abed, who is a elected official of Standing Together and an extremely thoughtful and articulate voice for Standing Together. And we have Alon-Lee Green, who is one of the founders of Standing Together, as well as co-national director of the organization. And so they're going to talk to us. I hope we're going to find out more about their own personal stories, what brought them to the organization, what the organization's goals and activities have consisted of, and how they're dealing with the terrible situation that's going on at the present time, which is in its 100th day today. And so here they are.
Thank you so much, James, for having us. Thank you all for joining. So we were asked to talk a little bit about the movement, just to give you a little bit of context of our theory of change and how we were actually founded. So you have a context of who we are, and maybe it will help you better understand how October 7th met us as a movement, not just as individuals, but also why we reacted the way that we did and how we view this moment, this junction in time. I'm Sally Abed. I'm 32 years old. I live in Haifa, with my husband and our dog. And I've been with the movement. I joined the movement 2 years after it was founded. And it was really, we were at an addict of a storage of a bookstore. So just so you imagine how small it was. And really, I remember I went in to basically what was then still the founding members, with just one layer of activists surrounded who joined these efforts. It's incredible to see how much Standing Together has been able to do in its 7 years of existence. Standing Together was really built and founded under two main pillars of beliefs or understandings. We have a very articulate, elaborate, amazing theory of change written that I'm more than happy to send to you as well. We translated it to English. But just so you have an essence of how we view the world, how we view our world, and how we view our role in it. We base our work on two things. One, under the premise and the understanding that we need a new political story. We need a new political protagonist. Every story has a protagonist. Who's us? Who's the we? When we talk about politics, when we talk about peace, when we talk about equality, when we talk about social justice, who are we talking about? Who are we talking on behalf of, right? And we saw that the Israeli society and Israeli politics never really had a political story that included all of us. A majority of Israeli society, both Palestinian and Jewish, who share a deep interest in peace, inequality, and social justice. So when I talk about, that's really one of the main pillars of the movement. It really is translated into everything that we do, from the posters that we put about a livable wage, our campaign for a livable wage, and our campaign for affordable housing. When we talk about climate justice, or we talk about the smallest issues which are not very small, about real life issues that we deal with. We really lead people's politics, people's interests, and we do it out of a very deep belief that the majority of us in Israel, both Palestinian and Jewish, have the interest in what we actually advance and the vision that we advance for a society that is equal and just, a society that has a peace with the Palestinians and shares this land, not only this land, but this country and our society with Palestinians such as myself. The second thing that we are based on is our realization that mobilizing people, just getting people on the streets to protest what is bad, to protest, to condemn their reality or to criticize their reality or react to their reality is just not enough. It really remains, it keeps us within the status quo. You know, when you say no to occupation, when you say no to racism, when you say no to economic inequality, you really are stuck within the status quo, within the current paradigm. And we understood that we need to be more proactive, also with a political story, but also very technically with building and organizing people, not only mobilizing and getting people to protest against bad things, but getting people to protest and organize and build power around good things that we want to see and our actual demands of how we want to see it, and build a new alternative, a new political imagination for the Israeli public. And we do that very seriously. We take it very seriously. You know, Standing Together has really grown substantially and sustainably across the years. And we see, unfortunately, that you know, we had many junctions of crises, of let's say turbulent times. We have many of those, unfortunately. And we were able to not only react to them quickly and efficiently, but we were able to also build up on them and create more and more power. Just like now, you know, we are actually getting stronger, not merely reacting to our reality and resisting it, but also building an alternative, while also, you know, building power and absorbing more and more people with us, which we will talk. Alon-Lee, do you want to talk about how we met, you know, this moment and October 7th and what we have been doing? And then I will continue from there.
Yeah, sure. So on normal days, Sally touched upon the theory of change and how we are operating, and the principle of activity and operation. And I think that you know, in the past years, what Standing Together has tried to do is to build power around the struggles for peace and equality and social justice. And we were directing or pointing towards a direction of you know, changing our society. But I think that since October 7th, I'm like, you can't see the very strong rain that is like really on my window, right? You can't. Okay. It's kind of rare for Tel Aviv. Since October 7th, I think the main thing that changed is apart from the reality, is the sense of urgency. It's our understanding that, I guess it wouldn't be dramatic to say that it's our final battle here, that we are going towards a direction of mutual destruction, of losing generations of people that will not be able to live here, to raise their children here, to imagine a future here. Talking about Jewish people in Israel that completely lost any sense of safety. We're talking about Palestinians in Gaza, in the West Bank, that completely lost their lives and also the belief that they might have even a future that is worth living. And Standing Together we understood this moment that we need to operate fast and we need to operate in an emergency capacity. And we did three main things. One was looking inside our society, looking at the very fragile relations between Palestinian citizens of Israel, 20% of our population, and Jewish citizens of Israel. And we understood that there are people, politicians, people with a lot of power that are trying to push those two communities into a direction of collision, into a direction of more hatred, of saying that all the Palestinians in Israel are terrorists, or they support terrorism, and they back Hamas, that they are part of this notion of trying to destroy Jewish lives in Israel. So we created our solidarity guards, our Jewish Palestinian solidarity guards all across Israel. We brought together groups of people from across the sometimes two different villages. One can be a Jewish village, one can be a Palestinian village, but living really across one road. We brought them together and we created solidarity activities. We created volunteering together. We created a lot of mutual aid and support work to just show that we are in this together, that a missile that is dropping on a house in the north or in the south will not stop and ask whether it's a Palestinian house or a Jewish house. It will hit everyone. And the reality that we're suffering is a reality we're all suffering from inside the Israeli society. So that was a very strong first thing that we did. The second was gather a lot of people together in rallies all across Israel, and trying to sound a voice of Jewish-Arab partnership, of Israeli-Palestinian peace, of not losing a hope that our reality here in Israel and Palestine can look different, can go on a different path. And we gathered hundreds of people in each event, and we felt, I think, that people wanted to be together, that people wanted to be part of something that doesn't feel lonely, that doesn't feel scary. People wanted to meet a Palestinian if they were Jews, and Palestinians wanted to meet a Jewish person, and they wanted to hear the other telling them, it's okay, I'm also afraid. And there were a lot of tears in our events, a lot of tears. People were just standing there and crying, understanding that it's a miserable, scary reality, and it's okay to feel that, but it's also okay to accept we're not the only one that are feeling that. And if there was one thing that was mutual to all the citizens of Israel, it was the fear. It was this feeling that we are all dealing with an uncertain reality, a scary reality, and we are all afraid. And the third thing we did, which is the only thing that I can say that really got much better, was we launched a hotline, a Jewish Arab hotline in Israel, because in the very first few weeks of this war, we could see we had this crazy, terrible phenomenon of political persecution of Palestinian citizens of Israel. It was a normal, sad thing for a Palestinian citizen of Israel to write in their Facebook page, for example, that they are sad for the children in Gaza. And that could get them fired. And that could get them expelled from university. Some people said or wrote that also Palestinians will pay the price now of what happened, of what Hamas even did. And some of them got called for a hearing because of writing that. The police even arrested Palestinian citizens of Israel because of participating in a political event. They arrested even politicians for organizing a demonstration. And we saw a very expanding scary phenomenon of politically persecuting Palestinians just because they have political beliefs, or just because they do not support the war, or just because they say that also Palestinians are paying the price. And the most shocking thing, which is still controversial, but this sentence that all the children in Gaza are innocent was a controversial sentence in Israel. It's still very controversial. Some politicians, even today, from the opposition, not the extreme far-right coalition, people like Avigdor Lieberman, they write even today in their Twitter, in their X page, they write there are no innocent children in Gaza. Or the children of Gaza today are the terrorists of tomorrow. The one that we didn't kill in the war of 2014 are the ones that committed the massacre of 2023. And if you would say this is not true, all children are innocent, you could get fired from your job. And we had a support line, a hotline that a lot of Palestinian citizens called to get our support and aid, and we help with legal aid and with a social work aid and emotional support. And I think it was a very important thing. And I must say that today it's much, much better. I think a lot of the Jewish companies, a lot of the Jewish institutions, and other co-workers of the Palestinians, they understood that the Palestinian citizens of Israel are also suffering from a trauma, are also afraid, are also allowed to express their views and their feelings. And I think it's a much better, correct me if I'm wrong, Sally, but it got much better since the beginning.
I disagree with you, actually.
I
do think it got better just because it was effectively the deterrence was so effective.
Yeah.
So people just didn't talk anymore. So we don't see it anymore.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, but I also don't think it's a good indication.
That's true, but at least, yeah, we're not looking at a mass firing phenomenon at the moment. But yes, it is extreme reality where Palestinians are afraid to speak up their mind, to express emotions, and yes, it's still going at the moment. People are afraid. So those are the main reactions we had. And Sally, back to you.
I do want to add to that, just to connect to that, and maybe add a little bit to Alon-Lee, and we would love to, James, I don't know how you thought to do this, but we'd love to get as many. We definitely didn't cover everything, right? So for people to have questions, for sure. But I do want to add, that's in many ways, it's important for us also to model, Palestinian leadership from Israel that is saying things. It's very privileged. I feel very privileged to have the protection of a job that pays me to say things that are political, and the fact that we are able to provide a safe net for a cadre, for a group of Palestinian leadership within Israel to speak both in Arabic and in Hebrew about this, and provide some kind of legitimacy, some kind of hope, some kind of breath for these Palestinian youth who are extremely scared right now and deterred, and really feel like they don't get to say anything. We are also creating a lot. Alon-Lee spoke about the different communities that we're working on, both locally, on our mixed cities, our mixed areas. We have localities where you have a bundle of both Jewish and Arab towns, where we are really doing a lot of a safe space, communities, both joint, but also just in Arabic, to provide people with a safer, space to provide people the safe space to actually come and feel like they want to say things, but also to learn new things, and to also understand what are the prospects of change, because it really feels like it's not changing. But we're also mostly and most importantly doing it through our student campuses. Campuses right now are a very, very hostile place. They're also a very strategic space for us that we have been developing for years. We are one of the largest, most organized forces on campuses today. We are also heavily represented in student unions, which is very, very nice, and really it was such a positive development in recent years. And now we are seeing how these campuses that are in many ways with a segregated educational system, they are the very first to meet Palestinians and Jewish Israelis. It's the very first meet. And for us, we have been creating also another initiative that's called A Campus for All, which really is organizing hundreds and hundreds. I think around, we got to 700 students at this point that are being organized, that are receiving a lot of support, that are receiving training, leadership development workshops, and really receiving all the support they need to create certain safe spaces within these campuses, and also advance more tolerance, more partnership, more solidarity within campuses. And I want to zoom out a little bit so we can accept, get questions. I loved, Alon-Lee, what you said. I think this is the first time that I hear you say it in this way. It's the final battle. It really feels like we are at a historic junction, and we have only two options, either mutual destruction, really mutual destruction, where we see catastrophic leadership from both peoples. And obviously we are looking at our leadership, within the Israeli society, a leadership that is really taking us into a doom, not just as a society, not economically, socially, politically, but taking us into a real doom of like no future. And a lot of the Israeli public right now, it's very hard to explain it, especially for me as a Palestinian, having the experience, the collective experience as a Palestinian, but also looking at the collective experience of Israelis who are stuck in this one option, no alternative, where you have to look, you can't look away, and you over and over again have to justify atrocities that is being done in your name, and all of this craziness that is happening, and crazy budget cuts, by the way, that are happening right now to Israel. We are going to go into a massive economic crisis in Israel, and just people are stuck in that with no alternative, no prospects. No one is telling them that there's another option. And there is no powerful competitive story on the other side. If we really look at the political leadership within the left or the center, there might be saying some things that are different, but if we really look at the very basic policy of the war, and just going blindly into this, it's almost a consensus politically. And I think that's why it's so urgent for voices such as Standing Together and other partners around on the ground, that we are really trying to also gather around us, and also amplify the voice of this new political current that is coming out, and the new political leadership that is coming out, that is currently not official, not elected yet, right? And we're the only ones that are giving some kind of prospect of the other direction. And it's very critical. It really is the final battle, and it's really just peace. And the idea of peace is, for the first time in many, many years, is on the main table right now. And it's time we take it. It's time we take it and we run with it. This is it. This is the time.
I want.
Alon, did you want to say something? I do have some questions people have asked, but I'm happy to wait until you get a chance to respond.
Shortly add to what Sally said, and even though it's tough, I want to put on the table some of the worries, that maybe a worry is too light of a word to describe this kind of a feeling we have regarding the situation right now. We know that our government refuses to discuss how the end of this war will look like, or when, or why, or how. They also refuse to speak about what will happen in Gaza in the next day. So it's not only how are we going to stop the war, but also how life is going to look over there. We do know that up until now, at least 23,000 Palestinians died in this war. We know that thousands of children lost their lives, died by the Israeli bombing in this war. We know that 70% of all the homes that are sitting in buildings in the Gaza Strip, in cities across Gaza, have been destroyed. And that gives us a question of how can a society, how can a people move on from this kind of a reality? How is the next decade going to look? Are we going to have 2 million refugees sitting on the same land that we are living as well? And even if I'm disregarding the human rights questions and the solidarity that I can express with the Palestinians, and I'm only asking the question of my interest as a Jewish Israeli citizen, the interest of the Jewish collective, 7 million Jewish people living in Israel, is it with our interest to live in such a reality together with a people that lost all ability to exist, that is suffering from hunger, no running water, no electricity, no ability to have a roof above their heads? And I will say that it's completely not our interest. That the thing that the Israeli government is doing right now is not refusing to speak about the day after, the next day, but is actually creating the day after. It's creating the day after in a way that there will be no end to this war, and we will have to live in an endless war, moving from one cycle to the other, having to have no other choice but to maintain our presence in Gaza Strip, because how can you prevent terrorism when 2 million people are living without food or shelter? And that is the reality they're working on. There is no need. There wasn't any justification to destroy full cities and full neighborhoods and full villages, but they did. They did. The government decided to really erase some towns in Gaza from the face of the earth, and it's a fact. I talked to a friend of mine who is a pilot in the Israeli Air Force. He's actually dropping bombs. He said, I don't know what we're doing there. I don't know what ends is it serving. I don't know what are we thinking, but we're creating more terrorists than ever was in Gaza. So our worries, and I'm sorry to drop something so heavy on the table right now, but we are worried that the reality that is being created right now in Gaza is a reality that is not only catastrophic to the Palestinians, but it's also a reality that ensures that the future of the Jewish people and the Israeli citizens in Israel will be enslaved to this terrible, catastrophic reality.
Thank you. So there are a bunch of questions. Many of them have to do with what you had already mentioned, that the question of other constituents, other people that are working on these questions. One question that just came in was a fear that it sounds like you're sort of alone in this effort, and so several questions wanted to know about who are the other organizations that you're working with, both within the state of Israel, but also more far afield. Are there people in the West Bank, including Jews in the West Bank, or people in Gaza that you are able to connect with, working with? Two of the groups that are mentioned in one of the questions are a Parent Circle and All Its Citizens. Are these allies and co-workers of yours, or are you feeling sort of isolated in your work?
No, of course, I mentioned that too.
I
Obviously,
thought so, yeah.
yeah, I mentioned that we have partners around us. I do want to say, when I say we are lonely, it's because in many ways, many of our partners around us and us, we don't have political representation yet. We are still somehow in the margins of the Israeli politics, and we need to be more, to almost fight our way into a legitimate represented politics and political leadership, which is why I said that we feel lonely in that way. I do want to say, of course, there's not only there's cross-border organizations that work for peace, such as the Parents Circle, such as Land for All, who are trying to provide a different a vision or an alternative vision of a political solution, right? Of a federation. 2 states, 1 homeland. You're more than welcome to look into it as well. We don't endorse any formal things, and we also work with others. You have Women's Wage Peace, which we are co-sponsoring a protest with. You have Breaking the Silence. You have many NGOs as well, professional NGOs that are doing things. I do want to say that what's not special, but what's I guess it is special or unique about Standing Together and the role that we are taking is that we are the movement, right? We are the movement that is able to organize and mobilize and have a base of people and sustainably just growing all the time. And that allows us to actually create all these collaborations with the amazing ecosystem around us. Many organizations, not only peace organizations, by the way. We also have less political, organizations, but amazing ecosystem of shared society. NGOs such as Abraham Initiatives and Sikui Ufuk, which are also promoting, shared society without talking about the bigger picture, and it actually allows them to do things that we can't do. Because they're not political in many ways, but we still, of course, heavily collaborate with them on various issues within our communities.
Thank you. So a couple of other questions. I'm trying to see what I can do to combine them into one. And I'm getting a lot all of a sudden here. So thank you, everybody, for the questions. And just give me one moment to pull them up. Let me ask one. And there was one that just came from Sabra Lee about how do you respond to government repression, which is a question that I think is, has come up a few times. What is the, how does the government in Israel respond to your work? How does and does this sort of is there sort of a sense in which I mean, this is a different question. So let's just get how is there a way in which you feel like the government is responding specifically to you? Is there a sense of the government repression? What do you feel like you can do about that? And is there a difference, I guess, between the repression felt by Arab citizens of Israel versus the Jewish citizens? Can Jewish citizens say things that Arab citizens can't?
For sure, yeah. I can write things on my Twitter or Instagram that will get Sally arrested. And I can write them and I will not be arrested. I guess there's also a boundary for me. And I guess the government is, it at least turns a blind eye towards the very heavy attacks that we get as political activists that are sounding a very strong voice at the moment against the direction of this war and the killing and not pushing towards a political settlement, and that's the main way to silence us. That's the main way to make us choose ourselves not to say anything. Writing right now something on social media will get you thousands of comments and attacks, and it will get you, people will publish your phone number, people will start looking for your home address, people will try and wish you all the most, the most terrible, disgusting things, especially if you're a woman and Palestinian, and you will pay a personal price. But having said all of this, we are not the story here. Our personal, existence as activists, as leaders in this movement cannot be the defining question. The story we're trying to tell is a story of a collective, of a power that is growing, of being hegemonic, even if we're not believing at the moment that we are the majority, but we're speaking as if we are the majority because we believe that we represent the interests of the majority of the people in Israel. And we understand that we can't and we wouldn't and we shouldn't be a chaste minority that feels very, righteous and that we hold the truth and we are telling the majority that are racist. No, we're not taking any moral high ground. We're not talking out of a perspective of moralities. We're talking about interests. We're talking about the majority. And we are in this to convince and persuade people. And it's very important for us to hold this place. A lot of leftists like to feel, that they're right, that they have something they are doing that makes them heroes. We don't want to be heroes. We want to be normal. Like we want to be part of our society.
You want to be the average Israeli that thinks that ending the occupation is going to benefiting them and they should fight for it. And
exactly, we want to convince our society from within our society, and it's a very important. That's part of our theory of change. And I will say this lastly, the government is trying to narrow down the democratic freedoms even before this war. It's not, it's not a secret that for 10 straight months just before the war started, tens of thousands of Israelis were in the streets demonstrating against this government, fighting for, the independence of the Supreme Court, fighting against the judicial overhaul, against the attempts of this government to narrow down the democratic freedoms. And they are using this war to even further their attacks on these democratic freedoms. And just last Thursday, our rally in Tel Aviv got canceled because the police didn't allow us to go out and demonstrate because they said, and that's a quote, that calling for peace right now will incite the public. Sally, am I saying correctly? Will incite the public?
you can.
Will agitate or something.
Will provoke
the public, and then they wouldn't be able to protect us. Of course, we didn't accept it, and we're going to have even a bigger rally this Thursday. But it's a very fine line, and I'm talking with you about strategy right now. It's a very fine line of, using what the police is doing, but also not making people afraid that they will come to our rally and there will be police brutality there. So we are trying to keep this hegemonic approach to politics. We are speaking from the perspective of being a majority, of representing the majority and not being a chaste political minority.
And definitely not morally lecture the Israeli public.
Yeah.
I do want to add to that, not just, I see something about social media as well. It's not, one of the most concerning things right now is not only the amount of extreme hatred that we see, it's also the lack of resistance for that extreme hatred. So I don't want to see, I don't expect everyone at this point of time of history in Israeli society to be, to call for a ceasefire and to end the occupation and call for peace, right? I don't see that happening. I do think what we are trying to impact is the people to the right of us, let's say, the center, the people that were out on the streets for 10 months prior to October 7th. And the ones that are coming back to the streets right now, by the way, I don't know if you saw, but there was a pretty large protest yesterday, which is great to see. People who are going to come back, they're going to talk about bringing back the hostages, of course, and also, anti-government protests that are going to talk about the failure of this government. And we do want to be able to impact that conversation. Also to talk about, of course, bringing back the hostages as the number one priority that we should have, but also talk about this government, and not only it's not even a failure, right? It's an intentional policy that they have been conducting and leading for years, intentionally, knowing the price, the possible price that the Israeli public will pay. It's almost intentional, right? And they knew the cost. It's not like, oh, oops, it happened. We didn't think it's going to happen. I really think that they knew this is a real possibility. And they continue to do it. And I think we should be, one of my main concerns is the inability of this camp, to the right of us, the more conservative center camp, which is going to be critical, for the next upcoming years. It's going to be critical in building the new center, the new, mainstream politics. They need to be able to resist what can be best described as fascist, callings and expressions of the extreme right wing. And they're not doing that right now. And it's a little bit concerning, to be honest. And it's even more concerning that the condonement of the police, against us, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So a couple of questions that are similar here. Here's one. You said the bombing of Gaza is creating more terrorists. I agree it is likely to have that effect. What alternative do you see that will stop the current terrorists who are dedicated to the elimination of Israel? And a related question, which the poser suggests might be naive: how does Standing Together respond to the Hamas goal of killing all Jews, as many people understand from their constitution? He asks if he's missing anything, and then goes on to ask, how do you feel that we should approach solving the problem of the right to return?
Wow, that's a question.
I think it's based.
I
am not interested in any way to legitimize or protect Hamas right now. Sorry, I'm laughing. According to their charter, they actually do state, I can't believe I'm saying this, but you asked, they actually do state for the right of the Jewish people to exist on the land. They do. Just so it's there. But that's not obviously the question, and that's not the problem that Hamas has. It's not about the charter. And if we do it, if we start dealing with their charter, which is actually like kind of, if you start arguing with that, then you're actually like they're actually like fun, like we can work with that, which is we shouldn't, right? So I don't think we should go there, and we should really go with the actual applied practices that Hamas has been leading, as a not only catastrophic, dangerous political organization for Israelis, it has been catastrophic for the Palestinians way before October 7th. And I think that Hamas is not only an organization that actually exists. Number two of Haniyeh was assassinated. Not even in Gaza, right? Actually, the majority of the major assassinations happened outside of Gaza since the war. But it didn't really, rock Hamas's power or grip on power. I think what needs to be tackled is not Hamas as an organization. Obviously, I do understand the need to tackle the militant parts. I'm not an expert. I don't know how to do that. I definitely know that it's not by, erasing a whole strip. I do think that the idea of Hamas can be the weakest when you have intent and real intention for peace from the Israeli society. And even if it's a semi-intention for peace, like if you look at the 90s, during Oslo Accords, even then, when the Palestinians didn't really perceive, Oslo Accords as a real intention for peace, but there was some kind of, prospect for peace, for ending the cycle of violence. That's when Hamas was the weakest ever. Yeah. And I really think that we need to really understand it that way as well. How can we actually create what creates an environment for such extremism and its violence and military control and oppression and injustice and, children who have not seen anything but siege and famine and violence. And in many ways, once you have a prospect for a future, prospect for life, then you kill the idea, not the organization itself. That's what I have to say about it.
I just want to add that I think we all agree that Hamas is a problem, and their ability to indiscriminately kill citizens, civilians, children, women, elderly men, and so on is a problem. It's a scary thing to have on the same land that you live. But not everything has a military solution, and I think we need to remember that when we're talking about Hamas, because so far Hamas got stronger. So far Hamas got stronger in their support amongst the Palestinian people. They didn't lose their military abilities. I guess there are tens of thousands of Hamas fighters in the tunnels that none of them, was really strongly dealt with so far. None of the hostages, the Israeli hostages, have been brought back alive because of a military rescue operation, apart from one soldier, Ori Magdish, that was released as the first hostages. But 108 Israeli hostages came back because of a political deal with Hamas. So that kind of shows you that not everything has a military solution. And also when we ask that, and yes, I would say myself, yes, it is an extremely legitimate thing to protect our citizens against atrocities and attacks of Hamas. Yes. But then if you are taking it one step further and you say, I'm going for a full-on war with Hamas, what is the price we are willing to say? Let's say 100,000 Palestinians, is the price of killing them in order to completely erase Hamas from Gaza. Is it a price we want to pay? Is it a price we can live with? Is it a price that will keep Hamas not a problem, but maybe will create a much bigger problem? I think you guys from the US, you can teach us a lesson or two about what happens when you go to a military war, an operation against one organization, and then another organization rises and becomes even a worse problem. So I think we need to keep that in mind and understand that the solution we're looking at the moment needs to be a different kind of a solution, because this war didn't work and Hamas didn't, disappear, but we are still facing catastrophic reality over there.
Great. So there's a bunch more questions. There's one here about labor organizing, which this questioner wants to know more about it, but also wants to know what you think about it as a way to reach people on the right, especially in the West Bank. And then also just to re-ask the question, which I'm not sure was answered, and I'm sorry if I missed it, about whether or not you have connections with folks on the West Bank and in Gaza.
So in regards of workers' rights and unions, so Standing Together is a socialist organization, and we also hold the strategy of creating politics or centering our politics around people's lives, and looking at their lives as a starting point for our politics. And that means that before people are asking, just for before people are asking, why should I protect the Supreme Court? Or what does democracy mean for me? They're asking whether I'm going to have food on my table for me and my family next week. Am I able to pay the crazy rent costs in Israel? How come the prices are rising every month, but my salary stays the same? What does it mean about my survival next year? Those are very fundamental questions that people are asking much before they ask, what kind of an Israeli democracy and institutions they should have. And if you're hearing or not hearing some kind of criticism, so I will put it in a very more direct way. I think that many times the liberal kind of politics or liberal left-wing politics is a politics that is centered around values, ideas, or abstract ideas, too much and too less on people's lives and experiences. And I think that we need to see that the result of it in Israel, and I know you can recognize it also from the US, is a result that the politics in Israel becomes based on sociological groups. For example, if I will ask you, who do people in Ra'anana vote for? Ra'anana is a city northern to Israel, with people with high income and an academic degree, and they will vote for the center left. And I can promise you that if you will ask me who do people vote for in every city in Israel, I can look how much is the income of these people and what is the background of those people, and I will be able to tell you who they vote for. And that's a problem, because people shouldn't be born with the ballot in their hand. People should vote according to their interest, according to their material interest, according to the vision and horizon they want to see in their lives. And I think that what we're trying to do is to break this automatic connection between your identity and your political belief. And we do so by organizing around those life experiences and interests. For example, we did a very strong campaign to raise the minimum wage. I think one of the most recognizable campaigns of Standing Together in the last few years. We demanded to raise the minimum wage from 30 shekels an hour to 40 shekels an hour. And it was the first time that the left wing in Israel in the last 2 decades was able to organize in Haredi cities. And it was the first time that we really...
Ultra-Orthodox.
Ultra-Orthodox communities, yes. It was the first time we were able to go to the social and geographical peripheries in Israel and get the support of Likud voters to a left-wing movement that comes to those places with an Arabic Hebrew t-shirt. And we got the support. And I think if we are able to use the stresses, to use the real life problems that the government, the right-wing government in Israel creates, poverty, disenfranchised, people feeling left behind, even though the economy on the paper is strong, is flourishing, but no, people are feeling left behind, and we can use that in order to organize people and to come and reach communities that are not traditionally organized with the left.
Right. I have two more sort of groups of questions. The first one, they're related, so I'm going to ask them all. I'm going to ask them all in one fell swoop, and you can decide how to organize your answers. The first set has to do really with internal sort of questions within Israel. Specifically, are you asking, are you behind, do you support a ceasefire? And do you support the proposal by Beilin and Dahani, the Holy Land Confederation, as a facilitator for a two-state solution? That's sort of one set of questions. The other set of questions is more international but related. Is there a role for the international community, in particular Arab neighbors? And this person sees a larger problem vis-a-vis Iran, Hezbollah, so on and so forth, and how to address the reality of these actors. Now, we could include the Houthis, right, who are really committed to the destruction of Israel.
Can you just remind me of the first question, please? Sorry, I was
The
reading
first question is are you calling for a ceasefire, and do you support the Bailey-Dahani proposal?
What is the Bailey-Dahani proposal?
It's called the Holy Land Confederation, and I hesitated to ask you this question because I'm not familiar with it. I didn't know that you were familiar with it. If not, we'll just put it on the table as something that it'd be worth looking into.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, we are calling for a ceasefire agreement, but we're not just calling for a ceasefire agreement just because, you know, ceasefire and we're part of the trend. We understand that we need a ceasefire because it's necessary to bring back the hostages. We need the ceasefire because any real left ever historically is anti-war and anti-killing innocent people. We need a ceasefire because we understand that military solutions are not working and we need an alternative. So we are calling for a ceasefire, but we are also very, very relentlessly talking about the alternative and about the day after, and not simply saying ceasefire. We're really trying to understand how we can actually do it out, not only, we keep saying it, not only because, oh, it's morally bad. Yes, it's morally bad. It's morally required, but also to understand how we can be relevant to the Israeli public. I don't know about the agreement and the federation. I do want to say something more general. We are calling, when we say peace, we talk about Israeli-Palestinian peace and about the right for Palestinians for self-determination, you know, as a necessary and you know, requirement or stop, let's say, towards real sustainable peace and justice for both peoples. So we understand that, you know, in order to even start imagining the existence of the two peoples on this homeland, shared homeland, freely and equally, we first need to end the military control, the occupation, and the siege. That's the first thing that we are calling for. And after that, honestly, we don't draw on maps. We understand that we need to build the political will and imagination of both peoples to really understand how we're going to do this. And there are some great ideas out there. And hopefully we will move to one of them. But at the very beginning, we need to stop the military control over millions of Palestinians, and have some kind of equal, you know, a sovereign entity that can actually negotiate properly, and not with the Israeli neck, the Israeli, how do you say it, the Israeli knee on our as Palestinians.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to read two chats that came in. I don't know if they went into the whole one or just to me, so I'm going to read them just because I think they articulate well sort of you know, where a lot of people are. So Andy says, I love the way Alon and Sally articulated this notion of acting as if we're the majority and not trying to be a chaste minority. He is curious to hear more about how that plays out in practice and how that has an impact on the way that you've built the movement. Andy is also interested in Uri's question about how we build an organization beyond just raising money, meaning, you know, here on the American side, that, you know, obviously money is important. It just can't be the only way for us to support, meaning American people, and not just Jews, I would say, who can support this. And then finally, someone wants you to address the issue of the international, you know, Hezbollah, the strong, you know, Iran, the Houthis, the Strongs, you know, which is really sort of in a sense, sort of anti-Palestinian self-determination, if that self-determination includes shared society with Israelis. So that is a question that's still on the table if you're willing to address it. I will also just read now Uri's, who thanks you for the suggestions about how to support Standing Together. Speaking frankly from his perspective and others on the ground here in Boston, we want and need to do something more tangible. Opportunities to demonstrate, meet, show that there's a community of Jews, including Israelis and Palestinians, who support an Arab-Israeli coalition and a ceasefire. He doesn't know if it's possible, but it would be great if Standing Together could be another cause for activism and organizing abroad. So those, I was going to leave it there, but there's obviously, and then Ben Siegel has put the Holy Land Confederation into the chat. If can everyone see it? If not, I will put it to everybody.
So lots of questions. I will actually start from the what can we do in the US? And I want to be blunt and say that unfortunately, it's not our role or our responsibility to create the opportunities to organize on the ground for people living in a different continent and country where we live. We have a lot on our table here in Israel. We have a very challenging task, but we do extend our hand to create partnerships where we can both create a movement that is pointing on the right direction, on the different direction. We cannot take responsibility on really organizing things in Massachusetts or in New York. We will be happy to partner, to give materials, to share the work that we already created, because we believe in this kind of open source politics. But we really cannot be the entity that is creating the mobilization or organization on the ground. And we really encourage any kind of activity that is calling for a solution, that is acknowledging the fact that two people are living in this land and that millions of Palestinians are not going anywhere, and also millions of Jewish people, they're not going anywhere. And this is the fundament, the beginning of every discussion and every solution. That is something we really encourage and we would like to partner. And then yeah.
Are you still talking about that, or are you going to another question?
No, go.
No, I just want to say we are actually creating more, like we're trying to build a model where we are able to at least empower or incapacitate, give tools to people on the ground. So if you joined actually Friends of Standing Together, we are trying to do it in a way that is not merely, like monthly supporters and stuff like that, but actually like we're trying to create some kind of model where you are supported, where you have a constant connection, with the movement. You can be provided with our messaging, with our posters. We can help you, with posters, with the purple posters, with stuff like that, and actually be able to talk to you more frequently all the time, as communities. So we are trying to build local communities because we understand that they organically were built. And we do want to be able. So if you do believe that you are a community that is, or even beyond this community, really in Boston, we're more than happy to understand how we can at least collaborate on creating a more constant, public action in Boston, for sure.
Yeah. I didn't want to disencourage and say we cannot or won't help. What I'm trying to say is it's also upon you guys to initiate and to really be in a position saying we want to do something on the ground. If we have the connection to another group of Palestinians that is already doing something on the ground, we will make this connection and we will be gladly helping. But just on the other question about the Houthis and Hezbollah and all this very complicated reality that is on the ground here. One of the saddest, funniest tweets I read in the very first days of the war was, "Yay! Finally, Israel got elected for something. We got elected to host the Third World War." It was very funny because we never get elected to host the Eurovision or the Olympics or Euro Cup or whatever. But the Third World War is maybe something that will be
We
happening
get
here
to host the Eurovision.
only because we won. It was right. It was our right. But it's a complicated reality. It's a scary reality. It's a reality where there are forces that have agendas to create chaos, to create destruction, to hold the lives of countries such as Syria, Iraq, Iran, the lives of their own citizens in regimes that are not serving the interest of their constitutions and citizens. And it's something that those destructive forces, they have the power to do a lot of harm. I would say that if you really zoom out and you look on the problematic regimes of the Middle East, Israel is definitely one of these problematic regimes, right? Creates a lot of destruction in the area, goes to a lot of wars, holds millions of people under military control without having rights or citizenship. But we do need to understand that the only guarantee, that the only safe way to exist in the Middle East is doing peace agreements, is coming to a reality where we resolve the dangers and these problematic natures of relations, and we come to peace agreements. You know that the only two borders at the moment that we are not afraid of what will happen there tomorrow morning are the two borders with the countries we created peace agreements with, Jordan and Egypt. And more than that, I would say that, to the ones that are calling us naives and saying, you talk about peace in a time of war. Who do you want to do peace with? The Palestinians that are all Nazis and so on. People do say that in Israel. We answer that. That for decades on decades, Egypt was the most dreadful enemy of the Israeli state. Nasser, the leader of Egypt in the 50s, he had speeches where he swore to destroy Israel. He stepped on the Israeli flag. People died in wars with Egypt. In 73, the generation of my parents remember the war with Egypt as the biggest trauma of their lives. They remember that every second day they knew about a different friend that died there in Sinai and died in Egypt. And they were dreaded and feared of. And Egypt was the enemy in these years. But within 5.5 years after the war of 73 with Egypt and other countries, a plane was landed in Ben Gurion Airport. And the hatch was opened, and President Sadat came out of this plane, and he went to give a speech in the Israeli Knesset, in the Israeli parliament, the president of Egypt. And they went on agreement, on a way of creating a peace agreement. And since then, we have a safe border with Egypt, and people do not die anymore. People stop dying between Egypt and Israel. That's a fact. So we can achieve a different kind of reality. We can go on a different path, but we need leaderships that are willing, that have the basic will to go into this direction. But the example of Egypt is a one that we need to keep in our head when we're talking about this terrible reality at the moment.
I do want to put one thing
all the
there.
time, Sally. What's going on?
No, because Alon-Lee, I know you also agree with me, but I just wanted
kidding,
to be
kidding,
like
kidding.
obvious for everyone.
Yeah.
Obviously, the Palestinian case is very different, right? Than any other case. In many ways, it's the sore open wound of all of this, right? And in many ways, I think the minute Israel as a state has never been able to build its foundation in a way that it can exist sustainably in the Middle East. And I think we need to create those foundations. And once we are able to once we are able to provide freedom, it's so funny for me when I talk as an Israeli. Sorry, I'm like laughing because I hear myself. But once the Israeli public is able to build the political will to accept the fact that Palestinians exist on this land and they have the right to exist here freely and equally, and Israel as a state will change dramatically because of that. In many ways, I really think the Israeli regime will change, the politics will change, and I think that way it will also create the correct foundations for Israel to exist in the Middle East sustainably. I don't have a better answer for that. I'm not a political, I don't know anything. I know I listen to anyone else here about the Houthis and the Hezbollah, and like for me we're all in this, we're all listening to it together. I'm not what our mission is really just within our society right now. And of course, these things matter and they're not irrelevant. We just really are trying to create the very, very beginning, the ground zero of that reality to change in order for everything else to change.
Mm-hmm. I think we've probably reached the point where it would be a good idea to wind down this fascinating and very inspiring conversation. I'd just like you to say a couple of words about Friends of Standing Together, ways in which people can support. It's not enough, you said, just to financially support this effort, but I think that is a necessary, if not sufficient, foundation for helping you. Standing Together is an organization where, in order to become a member in Israel of Standing Together, you commit to paying monthly dues. And the monthly dues pay for many of the activities that Standing Together does, such as providing material help to people who have been displaced or who are in danger. And that is not enough for this movement to grow. So could you say a little bit more about how people here could support the organization?
I do think that, we have received unprecedented, support from abroad in the last 3 months, and also a lot of interest for people to act and to do something. So we are trying, first of all, financially. I do want to talk about that. We're a grassroots movement and we are heavily crowdfunded, which is very important for us. We don't accept, we don't receive any governmental money, not from Israel, not from abroad, anywhere. Most of our funders are actually just small to medium donors who are part of also of Friends of Standing Together, which we started because we understood that we wanted something a little bit more than just monthly supporters. We understood that we wanted people to be more in sync with what we are doing, to provide you with more internal insights on what we are doing, more private conversations with our leaders, with people on the ground doing things. So you have also a better understanding of our day-to-day reality here, as well as our strategy, our tactic, what we're actually doing on the ground. So you will be able to have a better insight once you join our Friends of Standing Together. I also added in the link that also Jim also shared. There's a WhatsApp group. I know you Americans don't use WhatsApp as much as we do, but bear with us. It's a group of the international community, and we're actually trying to create local communities, trying to prioritize which communities we are actually going to help create, like local international chapters, basically. We realized the importance of this work to be able to impact the international, the conversation abroad and how that's impacting us ultimately. We're doing the same in university campuses as well, by the way. We still don't know exactly where we're going to prioritize these localities, these chapters. So please be in touch with us and we'll do our best to examine and understand how we can help you in the best way possible. But definitely, becoming a friend, help us with this amazing new pilot initiative. I'm very excited about it. It has been really great to be able to connect, you know, in a more synchronized way with people, and not just, you know, receive the very generous, amazing donations. So please consider doing that. We're also going to come to the US, and we will let you know. So, and definitely we'll come to Boston. So hopefully we'll get to meet you as well personally.
Well, thank you both for taking this time and really putting so much energy into explaining all this to us, into answering people's questions. We much, much appreciate it. And we really appreciate what you're dealing with in meeting the challenges that have been going on since October 7th, especially. Thank you very much. You are the host of this. I don't know if you're going to stay on, if people want to talk further, but I think that we should formally bring a close to this presentation. I am very, very happy that we all got together today, and I hope it's been a valuable time for everybody here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you both. Thank you to you both. I'm going to send out the chat that Sally or Alon, I forget which one of you shared it, but I'll plan to send that to our congregation, and maybe Rachel, it can be sent out to TBZ people as well, so people have a reminder as to how to connect, how to support, and how to continue this very important conversation. So thanks to both of you. And thanks to everyone who came today.
Thank you everyone for coming in and listening to us.
Hi.
Wonderful day.